Okay, so now we will run the clinic session. There were 4 sessions this morning. We will go through them in order just to give us a bit of structure. So rules of participation was the first session. So let's continue the discussion on the rules of participation. Dale, you've been collecting some of the questions we already had during the session. But if anybody wishes to bring up more questions on that now, please do so in the Slido. I'm not tracking the Slido myself. Perhaps Sarah or somebody could do that and raise the questions if things come up there.
Yeah, okay. So in fact, we've collated the questions from the Slido session that we used first thing this morning in the ROP session. So we put them in a Google Doc, which we could actually share. Let me just try and find that. Hopefully it's this one. So can you see a document titled Ask Me Anything Clinic ROP? Or have I shared something completely different?
No, we see that.
Yes.
It might be worth making it slightly bigger for people who have it on a smaller screen,
Okay.
but it looks good.
Bit better, isn't it, without going too far? Okay. So some of these questions should be familiar from earlier on. So the first one there, do you prioritize and strongly encourage open content service providers and content that has terms of use that promote openness when included in EOSC?
Yeah, so a brief answer that I put in there is basically yes, but how could we do that would be an interesting question. And a lot of the answers are going to be the same here. They're going to be through openness and community comments. So by making things open and giving community the platform to respond, we hope that that will encourage, or even strongly encourage, service providers and data providers and other content providers to become more and more open. But ultimately, each resource will have to make their own decisions about that.
Okay, thanks. I should just say that because I'm sharing my screen, I've slightly lost flexibility to check Slido as well. So I'm not seeing if something's also coming in on Slido. So stop me if there are things on that channel that it would be interesting to raise. But otherwise, I'll assume that we go to the next question on this list about resources. Will users always know that they're using an EOSC resource? And if not, they won't necessarily automatically reference the fact that they've used the EOSC resource.
Yeah, that's true. The rule actually says that the users should recognize and reference the resource they use. So hopefully they do know that. Not necessarily EOSC, but I think if they know that they are using EOSC to access that resource, then we would hope that they would reference that as well. So we're not necessarily looking for lots of references to EOSC, we're looking for good tracking of the actual resource. The users will have access to more resources by using EOSC, but it's really the tracking of the use of resources that we want to enable.
Okay.
Next one. Are research funders expected to be members of EOSC? So this is really, I think, a question about the association, whether the funders will join the association. So firstly, our definition of users includes all those involved. So it would include funders, but I think a lot of the rules are not specifically, will not be applicable to funders. It's really a question about the association. I don't know, Catherine, if you're on, you may be best placed, or Carol, to comment on the funders' relationship with the EOSC Association.
we have, I mean, the relationship with the EOSC Association is, of course, through the membership. And, oh, my video is not working. And we do have, I believe, 8 funding organizations in the association now. So I think that's, it was a slow start, but I think we're getting there also with engagement from funding organizations.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the next one on this list is from Patricia Merrigan, evaluating the data, raw data, and evaluating the other components of open science, such as services, may need different evaluation criteria.
Yes, indeed, it's a good point, and that is one of the considerations why the rules have had to stay very abstract at this level. I think at the next level down, we would expect more concrete rules about the different kinds of criteria that are applicable to different kinds of resources.
Okay, thanks. Is it now? I can't see Slido just now, but is it worth having a quick look at the Slido session to see if there's been anything posted there?
Maybe Sarah could put the Slido up and see where we are with that.
Let me just stop sharing.
That first question is very interesting. Would it be possible for the participation of an alliance of RIs as one member? I don't know the answer to that. Again, it's a question about the association, I think, rather than the rules. I think any legal entity can join the association. So if there were a legal entity that represented a number of RIs, then they could join. Of course, if that happened, then they would get one vote instead of many votes.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Juan. So there are some membership organizations, obviously, like Giant and Science Europe, that are members of the association. So they're representing a much bigger kind of cohort. One of the issues would be that you need a legal entity status. So if it was just a collective of RIs that didn't have some kind of formal grouping, that would be challenging. I think this question might have come out because of the fees, because I think some smaller research infrastructures at the ES3 workshop were noting that it could be challenging to join the association and to pay 10,000 a year if that does end up being the fee. So I think one thing the association needs to consider is the various ways that people can engage. You know, it's not just through being a member. We will need a similar structure like the stakeholder forum to ensure that we're engaging with all of the communities and representing the different views. And, you know, membership is one way of being involved, but it can't be limited to those members, I would say.
Thank you, Sarah. If we move on to the next one, the ROP are equally targeted at hub and exchange services and resource providers, as well as the EOSC end users themselves, to reconfirm. So the ROP are targeted at all participants, or all the users in that broad sense of the word user. I think for the services that provide the core, there will be other arrangements in place to ensure they meet the required criteria. So, in fact, in the working group, we looked at what we at the time called the operators, but they are the operators of the EOS core. And we did start to draft rules about that, about them and those services. But I don't think those rules will rightly go in the rules of participation. They will be criteria that are put in place to govern the service level agreements or whatever it is that are put in place for those service providers that are providing the core services. I think the rules of participation as they stand will be will hold for those services, but I think there will be more criteria that they need to meet in line with their SLAs or whatever they have agreed to. Does an institution need to be a member of the EOSC Association to be able to provide or use an EOSC service? Definitely not, in my view, especially if we are having organizations from outside Europe participating. They are unlikely to be members of the association. So that's definitely not the case. So looking at the time, we're 15 minutes into this session. Maybe we'll just pick up one or two more of these because we had the photograph at the beginning. But then we will hand on to the business model section. Let's have a look at these. I'm trying to pick out things that are specific to the rules of participation. A lot of these are not.
I think because we had a separate Slido session running, I think all of the rest of these questions in this list come from the later sessions.
Yeah. Shall we hand that on to the business model section then?
Yeah.
Yes, no problem. Here I have also a document that I can share regarding that includes the questions that remained we didn't have the time to address during the session. Now, how can I? I'll try and share my screen. Sorry, I can't see it. Can you see it, the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what I have done,
I'd maybe make it larger again,
yeah,
just so that people can read it.
Is that better?
Great. Yeah, much better.
Yes, I think we can even go a little bit. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay. Yeah, so these are the questions that remained unanswered. I have tried to take them all on board. So we have one first from Rafael de Andres Medina saying, is the idea to recommend an homogeneous accounting system, i.e. international accounting practices to facilitate homogeneity and comparability?
We haven't gone that far into this. I think it's not, within the terms of the study anyway, appropriate for us to recommend how things are actually carried out. We're trying to uncover the prices. We have noticed there is a problem with not so much the accounting systems, but the way that accounting is carried out at an institutional level. That's not to say that it's a problem at the institutional level. It's a problem for us trying to find or disentangle the cost of individual services, which may or not be shared between national as well as European level resources within their current accounting systems and accounting practices. So it would be one way of approaching this, certainly, but I see that that would introduce huge problems for the people who are responsible for accounting. So this is part of the wider discussion about how to actually roll EOSC out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, okay, so then let's move to the next one.
Lydia?
Yes.
This is Fotis. If I may comment, I find
yes,
this a good idea. In the past, we have done a cost study, and we have used some methodology and cost model, a simplified one, because as Steve was saying, having full details of the on the accounts and all the details for equipment and personnel is really difficult in our environment. But a simplified model I think could do. So probably this is what is implied by Rafael, by a homogeneous accounting system.
Yes.
You know, a simplified cost model. I think this could be very beneficial, and having discussions in the future, I think is a very good idea.
Good, thank you.
I don't want to start a fight, really, I don't. But so we certainly need a simplified cost model to be able to understand what the costs are likely to be. But once EOS starts operating, it's not going to be good enough, I don't think, for the cost models to be simple. We can see that there's a level of complexity within EOSC that's already difficult to manage.
Yeah, so but I think that I think that what this means,
simplifying it is one solution.
Yeah, this is a bit different. Yeah,
okay.
The EOS core and the cost of the EOS core and its services is a bit different from what is implied here, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. So well, let's move to the next one from René Belso. Is not the motivation in fact negative for offering cross-border resources via EOSC in that it consumes labor and budget resources without compensation? Does national local protectionism hinder cross-border exchange?
Good afternoon, everyone. Andrea Valeri here. I am in lieu of Luca Ruggeri. And I would say that what we have seen and what we have concluded from what we are concluding from this study is that, in fact, not all the resources are currently exchanged, and probably the means would be through the EOSC exchange, and but this could be the direction of to achieve an open science cloud. And for regarding the national local protectionism, I don't know to what extent it can hinder cross-border exchange, and because we have a collaboration, the international collaborations and exchange of resources are already happening right now, and to a certain extent. But this is something that could be, if this would be an extended, this goes away from the political willingness to bring an European centralized open science cloud. So this is the fact.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, yeah.
However, it is this kind of problem precisely that I identified the need for a single European market for research.
Yeah.
So it is the case that there are many reasons why national assets or resources are not shared as openly as they could be.
Yes, indeed. That is the idea after all this effort.
Lydia, I see
yes.
Rupert has his hand up in the participants list.
Sorry?
Rupert, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, I can't see it, so thank you for the help.
Thanks, Juan and Lydia. I very much agree to what has been said on this question, and I see there has been a number of questions in the larger discussion this morning, and also after that, some of these questions were triggered by René. And we had a previous discussion also with some of the working group, or some of the different working groups the other day on this topic. I think it is very important to realize we optimally would like to have, in particular in the EOS exchange environment, more competition, and also the ability of national resource providers to stimulate and to contribute to the market, to the marketplace, and to share their services. And of course, there is protectionisms on the national level, and of course, there's priorities in the national policies around making sure that the use of these resources mostly is bound to national consumption and to the national users. And I think that's certainly an aspect that from the business model and funding side needs to be tackled to make it more attractive and to make sure that we have cross-border sharing of resources to some extent. I'm not quite sure we should be too much afraid, and national initiatives should be too much afraid of providing services, and maybe we can learn also from other models that we have seen. It has been mentioned that the high performance compute community around PRAISE and EuroHPC has a couple of models that go beyond the classical virtual access funding and of these kind of cross-border resource sharing. And maybe we can learn from this, but I mean, basically what it burns down is that there is agreement across the member states and on a policy level to make sure that those activities that providing resources into a general kind of market and common resource pool would be enabled, and these models are existing, and I think we can learn from this. And it really requires commitment by the individual member states and the players who are contributing or could contribute these resources. So I think there is a risk, and this risk needs to be brought up in the work of the association and carried forward to make sure that the EOSC exchange can flourish. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Rupert, for this clarification. Good. So let's move to the next question, which is about the models. We talked this morning about the learning model and the transactional model. So Paolo Manghi says, can them both simply coexist?
The answer would be yes, that's for sure. And in this context, we are talking also how the entities could be pulled inside the platform. And in this sense, in different times, there would be an engine that would attract more the entities than the other. So to start at the beginning, the learning engine would be the one that would be attracting more the users. And then when EOSC, with further iterations and the EOSC exchange, then the need would also shift to the easiness of transactions, so to lower the frictions, to lower transaction costs, and that's why the transaction cost, the transaction engine would be a more quote unquote important in pulling the users. But certainly the two models will coexist.
Mm. And then is a follow-up question on that, is that who will sustain the learning engine, and why could at least coexist for the core using?
And why could they not coexist at least for the core using?
Core using.
The transaction engine for new services.
Engine for new services.
Yeah, surely the two engines will always coexist. But I said it is a matter of what in a particular stage would be more quote unquote important to pull and facilitate interactions inside the platform.
But what can we say about who will sustain the learning engine?
Well, the learning engine at the beginning, certainly it will be sustained by the European Commission, but the two models will be sustaining each other. And certainly the transaction engine, while it will be kicking off, it will be the means by which the learning engine would be sustained over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
If I could just interject, I think there's an issue of language here. So talking about these different engines, these are engines conceptually in relation to business models. So one business model would sustain another business model. Within the context of the question as it's framed, I believe, they're asking about the sustainability of EOSC and who pays for the core. And that is an open question. We've suggested that the Commission should. It is also possible that services would be charged for, and that part of those costs would be used to compensate core services. So don't think about engines here in the sense of there being a piece of software doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Good. Then we have another interesting questions from Lars Fischer, saying that the main interest of providers offering services through EOSC is not really the business model of the federated core. It is the impact that EOSC will have on the providers' business models. Has this been studied?
That's a really good point. And we discussed before how EOS can, as a platform, and the entities in the ecosystem, and also the providers, are highly intertwined. So EOSC will, of course, affect the business models of the entities that will join it, as well as those that remain outside, albeit partially. The point is that EOSC's interest is to enhance and amplify their business models. On one hand, to get better and hone new opportunities, and on the other hand, to lower the transaction costs. Yeah, and so if I can clarify also to transaction costs, they do not only refer on money or cost reduction, but rather all the set of difficulties that are in place when two entities inside the platform interact between each other. So also in terms of time, availability of information, and so on.
Okay, good. Thank you. So then we go to the next question from Per Olof Hammargen. Sorry for the pronunciation. What are the possible in-kind contributions in this context? What resources are expected to be provided in kind, if whether it is possible to include some capital expenses?
I think I better take this. So if VA here is an acronym for virtual access,
yes,
I think the possibilities are very clearly defined in virtual access, and I think we have to bear in mind that the virtual access clauses in the model contract are there really as a preliminary experiment from the Commission's point of view about addressing this issue about cross-border service provisioning. I imagine that they will look at how successful it's been and then expand it significantly in future calls. That's just my personal expectation, because it certainly is inadequate as it stands. However, going back to the earlier part of the question, what kinds of in-kind contributions, it is up to the service providers and the service receivers to negotiate. I can imagine all kinds of services being of value, and I don't think we should put any constraints on those. The Iron Lady does indeed state that resources are expected to be provided in kind. So I think what the Iron Lady is saying is that we do not expect that people will just pay cash sums to access services. It's possible to set up a barter kind of relationship. Everything has value, and that value can be exchanged. We're not closing the doors on anything. There are no preconceived ideas about how various parts of EOSC is going to be paid for in inverted commas.
And sort of a follow-up question by Fotis about the whether you had a questionnaire to collect information on both capital costs and operational costs.
We tried.
Capital costs.
Yes, we tried to address both. We were not able to have that level of conversation, unfortunately, which comes back to my point about there are levels, there are certain kinds of expertise that are missing from EOSC, not just EOSC as an entity, but from this conversation. In order to be able to drill down, we need to be able to speak to people who understand the difference, or not understand, but are able to distinguish on a balance sheet which are the capex and which are the opex costs. So that's a very valid point, but we didn't get to that level. As I said when I was talking, that in the majority of cases, all we got were manpower equivalent costs on a PM basis. That's all we were able to get.
If I may comment, we got a number. I'm not sure that this number was in the slides. We got something like 7 million for the EOS core
Yes, that's
per
correct.
year. But I think we need some kind of methodology. I think the main point here is about the cost model and methodology to be able to, you know, to judge and to be able to provide some opinion on this figure. So it would be good. I don't know if there is any public documentation on the study, but it would be good if you can provide some, you know, a kind of methodology and some basic structures. I think you said you had the 4 categories. Providing some input on how you came up with a number would be very much needed.
Well, that information is provided in the second deliverable. And just to be absolutely clear, to manage expectations, the methodology was very simple. It had to be simplified from where we started from because of this inability to have the kind of conversation we were hoping to have. So that information is available.
Is it deliverable public?
I don't know, Lydia, is it public?
I'm afraid it's not yet, but it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, so there will be some figures publicly available, but
I can tell you that the methodology is incredibly simple, to overuse that word again, because of how we had to derive the information.
Yes, I can only validate that point, because we have tried, indeed, we have tried to go in a more complex setting of this project, but it has proven to be extremely difficult already to get the information that they have been able to extract. And that is precisely one of the recommendations that will come out of your study, Stephen, that the upcoming projects that will be funded by the European Commission should include a way, should promote a certain way to calculate costs, so we can get a more accurate assessment of where the money comes from for the that can be allocated to the services of EOSC. That has been complicated. I think I am at the end of the questions that remained unanswered at the session, which have been answered now. Do we have more questions on Slido? I will stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, I think we need to move on anyway to give some time for the training session. So thank you very much for managing that discussion. Some really, really important questions coming up there, and it's clear that there is still a lot of work to do in this area, but we're making good progress. Thank you very much, Lydia. I'll hand over now to Natalia, who managed the discussion on the training session.
Yes, I think we had, hello to everyone. If I may share, let me start sharing. We have prepared.
And Natalia, if you could kind of do this and finish at about 20 past the hour, thank you.
I think it should be less, you know, are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode. Now it is.
Okay, so now it is. So we gathered some of the questions that they were asked, and I think we more or less responded to all the chats that were happening while we were speaking. I think I will comment. Irina and Vanciana are here, so they can comment in on these questions. I will approach the first one, is what about training on the services offered via EOSC? Because we talked about EOSC being a facilitator, coordinator, and aligning processes for both users and service providers. I think what is missing here, I think still there is a misunderstanding of what EOSC is. EOSC is a federation, is a system of systems. I don't know how to put it, but what we're expecting is that service providers who put their services within EOSC, they are in charge for training for these services. What EOSC will do is to align, if people look at the SRIA and the new SRIA document, is aligned through coordinated efforts or concerted efforts, the various efforts, the local efforts. And I think what is very important is the training for the service providers to onboard their services in EOSC. And this has been very well documented in the graph that we have. So again, it's about data, it's about open science skills. We do not expect EOSC to provide this training. We are expecting EOSC to be the facilitator, but for the EOSC core and service and content providers or policymakers, we are expecting EOSC to provide to have some accompanying training. Is that clear? So then comments on the graph, on this nice graph that Task Force One has, our group has prepared. Vincian?
First unmute, and then so the role of the researcher. Yes. So this was, if you want, I can share my screen so that we can go back to the graph. But then, of course, I won't be able to see the questions. But okay, let's go back to the slides. I don't find it. Where is it? Sorry about that. I can't find it. Okay, let me just shut this one. Okay, so basically there was one question on the role of researchers that, okay, I have it, sorry about that. In big, okay. This is very slow, okay. So there was one on the role of researchers on top, and that could connect more to the data scientists, data analytics. This is indeed a comment we've received already, and that is on the to-do list, is how to make the boundaries even more flexible. Another related comment that we have received earlier on was that if you take the other side, the data, some comments said that the data stewards could be closer to the researcher, if you will, like that we would have to shift data curators and data stewards in a way, and also that the orange outer ring and the pink one should also overlap in another way. These are now we are aware of all this. The question is how to represent that in a way that makes it clear and that is comprehensive. So this is let's see. Oh, sorry about that. This is one that we are aware of. The other question I think there is about the librarians. That was more of a comment. Again, we are aware of this one. So for now, you have like the area of activity that is broadly connected, like to the pink part, but the role data, like a librarian, is not there, and it's been mentioned that it should be as such and not as implicitly understood as within the data curator, for instance, or the data stewards. I'm sorry, but Natalia, could you or Ehina guide me to the others on this, because I don't see them from. You're muted.
Yes, it was the role of researcher, okay, and data scientists.
Yeah.
Librarians are mentioned along with researchers and data center staff during the presentations, but they do not appear on the diagram in the roles. So is there a reason for this? And then where would research managers, administrators fit into the role mapping?
So this one is the one that I have to say that we have to discuss this one. Because a research manager, for instance, can be a bit of every of those roles. So this one, I don't know. We need to go back to the group if we want to get to that level of granularity.
So this one is still open for question and discussion, but if someone would like to jump in the discussion and to comment on this, I'm very happy to discuss this one. So this one is more work in progress on the research managers. On to you, Natalia, for the rest.
Let me change to those questions. Okay. Okay, so the next question we did not answer is that we have terms for fair skills in development to describe fair related skills, but is there anything else on the research engineer? Vanciano.
Well, so the anything else for the research? No, there are other frameworks addressing this, like the Edison one. FAIR-OS addresses research software engineers as others. Yeah, I don't see, but we can discuss this maybe. I will attend the session, the co-creation session, where this will be presented, so we can discuss this further on afterwards, I guess.
I think also this would be, if I may, this would be a lot of some work between our group and the work by the architecture group, this SIRS group, because yes, because we're not sure that it's within the remit of EOSC to make sure that we educate, or EOSC is responsible or facilitates the skills for research software engineers, but together with other initiatives, yes, that could be an overlap with other initiatives. So AI, for example, and what EOSC could participate and contribute to this skill set is about how these people are skilled in order to make sure that data is made fair, and how, I would put it in quotes because I don't particularly like that, how software or the services that are being produced, they are in this fairdom. I think that's where this overlap is. Then if we go to the next question is, and by presenting, it's not easy for me to see the chat. So if there's anything in the chat, please let me know, Vanciano or Irina. So should it really be the EOSC's tasks to provide training on data stewardship or the underlying? Okay. About the training catalog, yes, there is a collaboration with RDA on training catalogs. All our members are either members in the RDA working groups, or they have close relationships. Then what did people who responded mean with the skills and training? Was this specified? I think this had to do with the interviews on the national strategy. Yes, it was specified because we gave them this diagram, so it was specified what EOSC is about. And if I remember correctly, it was it was clear that it was data related skills within this digital skills agenda. So this is something we think that EOSC is more advanced, as well as the industry, and the rest of the groups at national level, they need to catch up to really see what data skills and within digital skills means. Then there was a comment, and I think this is a very valid comment about more extroversion towards non-research circles to communicate better what EOSC is about, because for the people who were not in our session, it was evident that non-EOSC related people felt reluctant in answering questions about skills and training in the overall agenda. When because they did not know EOSC, or they were not aware of the EOSC initiative. So what we saw is two separate worlds, And what one of our finding is that we need to do more work in order to bring EOSC to gap these to these bridges. And I think also once again.
No, I was just about to say, Natalia, that Emma is on the call if needed on the
training
on Task Force 4. Yeah.
Yes. So maybe Emma, I think we have 1 more minute, Juan. Then the last topic, there was a small discussion between 2 or 3 people, is that EOS skills and training, the way we are approaching it, is that seems to have a broader scope than what was initially thought. And I think what our response is that the group feels that the vision of EOSC, and I think all the discussions around the business models reinforce this vision, is that it's, data is just, is the gluing part, but data comes with services, like, processing, storing, publishing, sharing, anonymizing, all these kinds of services. So what we need to do is to educate people on all these services, and this is very, very important. And the other thing that was important from the consultation, it was, and from the discussions also with in the EOSC Free Day, was that it's not just the data skills for data stewards or curators, but we need to educate the leaders, the policymakers and the leaders. We need to educate researchers on interdisciplinarity, because data is not just, something technical. Data has context. And this is something that really, really fits within the EOSC remit. And I think, unless there are some questions that I'm missing, let me stop sharing so I can maybe see. Okay.
I think there's been good discussion in the chat, but I don't see anything that looks like.
Exactly. Lots of good chats also in the session, which is good.
Okay, so I think we can end that part of the discussion there and move on to Catherine, who will bring this clinic to a close.
Yes, thank you, Juan. And not only will I close this clinic, but I will formally close the EOS Governance Symposium 2020. However, there is another lightning talk session on the co-creation budgets on the main outputs and contributions to EOSC, which starts at 2:45 Central European Summertime. But as an EOSC executive board, we would like to say goodbye now to all of you. Many thanks for your attendance over the past 4 days, in which we looked at the work, achievements and challenges of the EOSC governance over the last 2 years, since this governance was launched in Vienna in November 2018. We talked about the transition we are in towards what is now called EOSC 2.0. We talked about the strategic research and innovation agenda, the multi-annual roadmap, the European Partnership for EOSC, and of course the EOSC Association. We looked at the EOSC support to the COVID-19 crisis management and beyond that. On the 3rd day, we looked at the implementation and challenges of EOSC, and today at boundary conditions. We also had many lightning talks from those activities who received funding via the co-creation budgets. So I would like to wrap this up and thank, first of all of my colleagues from the Executive Board and the Governance Board. And I would like to give a huge thank you to the hundreds of volunteers in the EOSC working groups, in the task forces, writing the statutes, and in the bylaws for EOSC. I would like to thank the institutions who have expressed their ongoing interest and commitment to EOSC by applying for membership or observership in the EOSC Association. And I would like, of course, to thank also the European Commission for their ongoing support and their vision, and all of the member states and associate countries for their representations driving the open science conversation forward in their countries nationally. And last not least, the thanks to the EOS Secretariat for organizing this event. This is the moment where I would normally be on stage and have a bunch of flowers to hand them over to Sara Garavelli. We have, I think we have an applause sign here, so I think we can all applause here too, and maybe we all unmute and just clap for once.
Yeah,
for
or
Sara
you can
and the
clap on
team.
reactions. Yeah.
So thank you, Sara. I think you've done again an amazing job. You know, it's difficult, these virtual events. I think it's run so smoothly. It was just really very well done. So thank you to you and the team at the EOS Secretariat. You guys have done an excellent job. Well, a couple of statistics here, fresh in from Nick. We had 977 registrants, and we peaked at 520 participants in one of the sessions. So I think that's amazing. We had participation from 52 different countries and a handful, and most of those European countries, associate countries of the European Union, but also a handful of countries from overseas, outside of Europe. And I'm particularly pleased to be able to say that we had complete gender balance, 50-50. So that's excellent for such an event. And let me just wrap up by saying that EOSC is and will remain a community effort. And it is an ecosystem which needs the collaboration of many across all of the European member states and associate countries. We need collaboration across all of the different scientific domains and on all levels, be it the European level, national or institutional level. I think the symposium has again shown that the EOS community is strong and ready for the next step through National Open Science Initiative, but also on the European level through the new EOSC Association and of course the EOSC European Partnership. And so with that, yeah, I'd like to wrap up. I invite my colleagues from the executive board to add anything they wish to say. Maybe I've forgotten something. And otherwise, of course, remind you to stay on and join the co-creation workshop that starts at 2:45. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Katrin. Thanks, everyone.
No, nothing to add except to thank you, Catherine, for that very good summary of the day, and to thank everybody for their participation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Who could it better in words and put it better in words than Catherine?
Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup,
Okay.
Catherine. Merci beaucoup, Catherine from France.
De rien.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
And stay on for the
Stay on
co-creation.
for the next session. Goodbye.